Tony D and Little Joan and Guest Dog somewhere on the floor. This is a brief Hollywoke hot take on the box office that I just had to do before crashing out. So we didn't get a chance to do this in a live stream. Number one is The Hunger Games. The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes comes in at 44 million, which isn't much. You know, this is worse than the Marvels, and it's a comparable movie. So it hasn't even cracked 100 million in the opening box office. It only did 54 million internationally, and I think it's got nowhere to go but down. I don't think the buzz on it is any good either. We'll see. It's also partly a musical, I think, which is weird, although it makes sense because that was part of the reason they were sold on Zegler, I guess, because she could sing. Um, it's bizarre. I mean, doing a remake of Woke's Side Story or West Side Story was already crazy enough because who the hell goes to see musicals anymore? I mean, back when they made that movie, musicals were huge and it's considered one of the greatest ones. And then you remake it at a time when nobody's seeing musicals and you make it woke. Not a good move. Not a good move, Joan. I'm glad you're find my fingers so tasty, little dog. Um, then at number two, at 30.6 million, is Trolls Band Together, which is a stupid kids cartoon. I have no interest in the Trolls movie. It looks god awful. Let's see. Internationally, it did better. So this movie made more money than The Hunger Games. It's at 108 million worldwide. And then at number three, at 10.2 million for its second weekend, dropping by 78% is The Marvels in 4,030 theaters. More theaters than any other movie this week. And it only came in at number three. Now, against The Hunger Games, sure. Against Trolls Band Together, it lost against that. I mean, this movie should have been, if it was number three, it should have been a tight number three because last week it made 47 million. It should have come in, at minimum, it should have come in at like 23 and a half, which still would have put it in third. But if it had been a good movie, it would only drop by like 30%. Would have just beat Trolls. But instead, this is an absolute disaster. And the Thanksgiving movie, which it lists here, it technically lists the Marvels as number four, and the Thanksgiving movie is number three. But, you know, I guess, I don't know why. Yeah, no, it would be, I would give it to Thanksgiving because Thanksgiving is in almost, 800, more than 800 less theaters. So it's actually doing better. It tied the Marvels on its second week, but it's actually in 800 fewer theaters. So there's that, and probably tomorrow or Monday or Tuesday we're going to get additional numbers, and that may even drop a little. So it may be like 10.18 million for the Marvels, and Thanksgiving maybe like a 10.24, something like that, and then it'll be even more embarrassing. And then dropping from 2 to 5 is Five Nights at Freddy. Now this is in it, but this is in its fourth week. So it was second last week in its third week, and now it's at 3.5 million, but it's still dropped less than the Marvels. Dropped by 61%. And then doing surprisingly well in six is The Holdovers. I mean, it's doing steady business at 2.7 million, although it's in 700 more theaters this week. And Five Nights at Freddy dropped out of 865 theaters, so take that what you will. Then at number seven, and this is a premiere movie, directed by Taika Waititi. It's a comedy starring a fairly, I mean, I would say Michael Fassbender is an A-lister, right? Next goal wins. 2.5 million. That's not a very good opening. Um, so, but it's about soccer, not a big sport here, I would say. And it's basically the Bad News Bears, in my view. Michael Fassbender's a drunk coach. 2.5 million, not even in international numbers. And then dropping from 3 to 8 is Taylor Swift. Again, this is already money. 244 million worldwide because it was cheap to make, but a big drop off because, again, I think the Swifties, once they see it, there's no reason to see it again. Not that soon, anyway. Dropping from 4 to 9, Priscilla at 2.3 million, but that's only a drop by half, and it's in 559 fewer theaters. Number 10, dropping from 5 to 10, dropping like a rock. Killers of the Flower Moon, which is, I feel bad. This is in its 5th week, though, 1.9 million. Then dropping from 7 to 11, Journey into Bethlehem from Sony Pictures, just shy of $1 million. Dropping from 9 to 12 is Radical, which I think is a foreign film, made 900,000, and then premiering at 13 is I saw the trailer for this and did a video about it, Saltburn, which stars one of the actors from the Banshees of Inisherin, who's very good in that movie. I'm sure he's good in this movie, but it only made $315,000. I don't think the movie. I mean, internationally it did 1.3 million, but that's not much for a. I mean, I gotta think it cost more than that, even though it's a European film, and it probably didn't cost a lot of money. But geez, had $1.5 million. That's not a lot of money in terms of movies. Dream Scenario, but it's only in 25 theaters, made $275,000. It's the one with Nick Cage. Somewhere around 15 from 10 is Paw Patrol, made $270,000. Man, that's dropping out of theaters quick. Wonder why. I guess because it's 8th week. Anatomy of a Fall, dropping out of theaters. Again, an art house movie. The Exorcist, Believer, sometime around 17 or 18. The woke horror movie, $125,000. After Death from Angel Studios, $66,000. Oppenheimer, still in theaters. They really want this thing to crack a bill. It's not going to happen. 51,000. Premiering at somewhere around like 2023. It's Fallen Leaves. No idea what this movie is. No, I haven't seen the trailer for this one. I'll have to try to dig it up. The Creator, 43,000. Freelance, look god awful. Go right out of theaters. $30,000. What Happens Later also didn't look great. 27,000. Here's premiering in 2 theaters, The Disappearance of Sherry Height, IFC, $17,000. Stop Making Sense is still in 24 theaters. It made $14,000. Is this going to be a regular thing? Like Stop Making Sense will be in a theater somewhere? I mean, it seems like it's been in theaters for months now. Common Ground, $10,000. Dix the Musical, goodbye. $9,000 something dollars. In All Dirt Roads, Taste of Salt, 4 theaters. Was in 6, down to 4. $4,000. Did this movie make any money? Wow, $40,000. That's rough. That is rough. I don't like the title. All Dirt Roads, Taste of Salt. The picture is just hands. Not sure what you were going for there. But yeah, I mean, this Marvel's movie is embarrassing. It's just embarrassing. I'll talk more about it tomorrow, but everybody's tweeting about it. The bottom line is, people are now openly saying it. What, people have been hinting at, which, it was Marvel Comics, comic comic books with superheroes are for guys. You can try to say, oh no, there are fangirls. Yeah, there are a handful of fangirls. But the original demographics, as I researched them back in the 90s, was that the audience was 90% men and about 10% women. And that jives with what I knew from working in a comic book store and being in comic book conventions for the last, I don't know, 30 years. That's about the ratio when you go to a show. It's 90% men and about 10% women. And most of the women are just there to support their men. Once in a while, you get some who are looking for comics. They're usually looking for very specific comics that aren't superhero comics. Very few of them are actually looking for superhero comics. Some are looking for Archie. Some are looking for, a lot of them like sex comics. A lot of them like indie comics that are cutesy or weird. The guys are the superhero guys. They've always have been. Even the female superheroes. Stuff like Wonder Woman, you know, all that stuff. It was all part of the same universe. They bought it. The Marvels mostly was seen by men. Surprisingly, I'm still surprised, but again, you have to understand comic book fans, and Hollywood refuses to do so. But you know, there are a lot of guys who probably went to see the Marvels, hoping it would turn it around, giving it a chance after chance after chance. I knew guys who collected comics, and they knew they were bad. And I said, "Why do you keep buying this? You know it's bad." And they would say, "I want to complete my run." So they have that, some of them have this sort of mental block where they will go see all the MCU movies. Because once they stop, they never come back. Once you stop buying comics, you're just not going to come back. Because what will happen is, and you know, again, movies are following comics down a rat hole. What would happen in comics is you had a successful Marvel universe, a successful DC universe with a decent continuity, good editors, reasonably good talent. You know, that went up and down, but overall, the universe would hold together, and you would, each comic was like a window into that universe, what was going on that in a particular week or month, and you would keep following it. And sometimes the universe would come together in a big story, sometimes it wouldn't, and sometimes it was just interesting to keep peering in through the window to see what was going on in the Marvel or DC universe. What happened was they eventually started exploiting their fans. And the way they would do it is they'd say, the most obvious way was crossover event. Oh, this is a crossover event. You got to get it. You got to buy one of everything this month because it's a big crossover event. So it's not just going to be Batman. It's not just going to be Spider-Man. It's not just going to be the X-Men. It's not just going to be Superman. You have to buy everything in order to follow the story. And they'd make you buy 80 some odd comics. But again, the stories went downhill and they got less and less interesting, less and less special. After Crisis on Infinite Earths and Secret Wars, the crossovers generally weren't that cool. You know, once in a while they'd have a moment of brilliance. I think DC had the longest run. I thought Crisis was good. They had a crossover called through 2001 Armageddon that was pretty good, where they had alternate histories. They had an Elseworlds crossover that was pretty interesting. You know, but this was sort of late stage Marvel and DC. They still had enough of continuity. They could do those stories and then return to some sort of semblance of normalcy in their universe. At some point, they just abandoned that. And they said, oh, it doesn't matter which Batmobile the Batman is driving. It doesn't matter what you write about Peter Parker, or whether he's at the college or he's working at the Daily Bugle or whatever. Just write a story. And so you ended up with all these disparate Peter Parkers, all these disparate Bruce Waynes, all these disparate versions of the characters that just didn't come together because, quite frankly, I think they were too lazy to have an editorial team that would keep it all coherent. It's a lot of work, you know. You would have to coordinate with the writers and the artists to make sure things were consistent across the books. And they abandoned most of that. And when they did that, there wasn't any reason to buy any particular issue because, you know, you had a window into a universe, but the universe was no longer functional. So why do I say all this? Because it's the same thing with the MCU. Once the MCU becomes so dysfunctional, you're not going to see individual movies. You will drop the entire line. So when you get out of comics, when you finally go, that's it, I'm done with superheroes, there's no reason to buy any of them because they were so integrated together. You know, you couldn't escape the crossover. Peter David one time famously complained he got pushed in to a crossover while he was writing the Hulk. He didn't want to be a part of it. He wanted the Hulk to stay out of it, and Marvel told him, nope, he's got to be in it. He's one of the big characters. He had to write an issue, I guess. I don't remember exactly how he wrote it, but he, I think it was the Onslaught crossover way back when. And, but something like that takes him out of the story he was working on, annoys the talent, annoys the fans, really. You know, when you have a character like Superman or the Hulk who's so powerful, and then suddenly, you know, he's in his own storyline with his own crisis, and then everything has to grind to a halt to deal with this giant worldwide threat, and then he has to go back to his problem. It takes you out of that story. It ruins the pacing to some degree, I think. It kind of depends on where the character is, but I totally understood what Peter was complaining about. And once you have a fan get out of it, they would get out of the entire medium a lot of times. They would go, you know what, I'm spending $50 a week. I complain about every title. I'm not having a good time. I can't follow anything. Or I just got to the end of a story, so I'm done. You know, it was that I used to buy Spider-Man comics, and I got to the end of a storyline where they did a story where Norman Osborn Jr. Figures out who Peter Parker really is, figures out he's Spider-Man. He goes crazy, becomes the Green Goblin for the umpteenth time, goes after Peter Parker, and they get into a big fight. At the end of it, he dies, just like his father, which you think would be a big event, but it really wasn't at that time. And it wasn't a great story. It was just sad. It was like somebody was trying to redo the story and continue it. And the end of the story is Norman's widow and his son see Peter, and Norman Jr.'s son is literally like a toddler, but you see him get angry at Peter, and the visual was like, oh, see, now a new Green Goblin will grow up to hate Spider-Man one day. And it was just like, dude, first off, you're never going to make Peter Parker old enough for that to make any sense whatsoever. Nobody says dead in comics. You shouldn't have killed them off. And eventually, I guess they undid it. I don't know. They undid it with Harry Osborn. I know that. They brought him back at one point. But once I was done with that storyline, I was done with all the Spider-Man comics. And it wasn't much longer later that I was done with comics. I just stopped buying. I just didn't have the money. For other people, it's just like, you ruined my story, or I'm just so sick. You feel like you're being exploited, you bail. So the same thing will happen with the MCU. Marvel's will be probably, you know, the end game was a huge jumping off point for a lot of people. It was a jumping off point for me. You know, what was coming down the pike didn't look good. I said, you know what, Endgame's perfectly fine ending. You know, it was good enough to end on. All the major characters are out. I had interest in seeing Thor 4 until he brought in Natalie Portman, and then I was like, screw this. Not gonna watch that. They killed off, you know, Black Widow. The Hulk wasn't gonna happen. They brought in all these woke characters. I'm like, I don't need to see anything after Endgame. Endgame's the end. And I think that's what happened with a lot of people. I did want to see Ant-Man Quantum Mania, and after the reviews came out, I said, I'm not seeing this. This looks god awful. God awful. And it didn't have to be. Could have been great. I really enjoyed the first movie. Second movie, it was good. I mean, I thought it was fine. But I liked the character in Paul Rudd, and I wanted to see more. I didn't like the haircut they gave his girlfriend, but okay. I could accept that movie. I couldn't accept the BS they were pushing for that third movie. And then the reviews came out, and I said, no way I'm seeing this. No way I'm spending my money. I don't even want to see it if I can see it for free. So, that cured me of any chance of going back to the Marvels or anything else. Disney Plus shows. I'm not paying for Disney Plus. What are you, nuts? What do you think this is? This is entertainment. Entertain or get the F out. And Disney just seems to think they can keep exploiting the comic book fans for millions of dollars. And you can't. There's just not that many of them, number one. And number two, again, even though there's not that many, they're the alpha fans. They drive the rest of the fan base for those particular movies. If your comic book friend is standing there complaining about the Marvels, complaining about the MCU, complaining that they don't do the movie right, after years of lauding them, well, what does that say to you? It says, oh man, my friend who knows all this comic book stuff says the new movies are terrible. That's a reason not to see them. So forget about the wokeness, so that's a huge factor, but that alone will get people to stop. And this movie basically gives everybody permission to bail from the MCU now. If you haven't bailed before, now you can bail because, oh yeah, nobody likes the Marvels. Oh, it sucked. Like, once they have that permission to hate something, they're going to hate on it. Because now they've decided, well, I'm not going to go see the next piece of crap Disney puts out. I've been dissatisfied for a while. And now the funner thing is, the more popular thing is to trash the MCU. So whenever somebody brings it up, what are they going to say? They're going to say, oh, you're still watching that? What are you, a baby? What are you, stupid? That's what happens. Once people get that permission slip to hate on the MCU, it's over. You'll never get anyone to say it. It'll just be done. You'll have to wait. And this is why studios would take franchises or, whatever, and shelve them for a while. Because they knew it was like, well, we'll put it on the shelf for 10, 20 years, and then we'll come back to it. And that's what it'll make us money. Because the cycle will turn, people will remember it fondly, they'll forget all the bad movies. So if you shelved the Marvels for 20 years and then recast everybody and relaunched it, you relaunch Iron Man, say you do it in the same order. People, and it was decent, maybe it wasn't the same exact stories, but it was decent, people would say, oh, this is pretty good. This is what I remember. Yeah, I always liked the Marvels. If you were to relaunch it 20 years from now and, I don't know, God forbid the commies are in charge and they say, oh, we're going to make it even more woke. You launched with Ms. Marvel. Yeah, then people would remember the terrible movies, I guess. But anyhow, I'm rambling. I'm so tired. Thanks for tuning in. Again, I just put one video up on Alt Tech, Odysee, Bitchute, and Rumble. Thought I'd do a quick box office, but it turned into a whole thing. I'll be back tomorrow with more videos. Good night, everybody. We'll see ya tomorrow.